Hi, everybody, and welcome to this edition of the KindHuman Cycling Show. Today, we've got a very special guest with us, Kelly Ulmer, who you probably know as a KindHuman ambassador. And Kelly's the one who's been writing all of our social posts around mental health and well-being. And I'm super excited to have the chance to share Kelly with all of you today. So with that, welcome, Kelly.
Thanks for having me.
So I was doing some research on your background, and you have a pretty impressive resume as far as your education and the work you do. So I know that you're a licensed counselor or a licensed professional counselor.
Mm-hmm.
Can you also talk a bit about your education in the area of mental health?
Yeah. So I started out in my undergrad years studying psychology, got my bachelor's of science in psychology, and then after a little bit of my own exploring time of figuring out my career path, I started a counselor education program at the University of Florida. And the program at UF is special in that it's quite longer than most counseling programs, where you stop at getting a master's degree. The program that I did allowed students to specialize in a certain domain of counseling. So my specialty was in mental health counseling. So I received at the end not only my master's, but an education specialist degree in mental health counseling, which just provided more of a focus on mental health specifically, as compared to you could focus on marriage and family or school counseling. And then after doing my post-grad hours, I originally actually got licensed in Florida and then moved out to Colorado and got licensed here. So it's been a long journey, but I definitely appreciate all the stages of my learning process.
That's a very impressive background, and I'm sure through that, as well as your continued practice in counseling, you've got a tremendous amount to share with our audience today. So thank you for being here again.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So today, what we wanted to talk about and share with you is the process of getting started, getting help. There are a lot of people out there who either think they might need help or know they might need help, and for whatever reason, they haven't taken the action that would best serve them. So that's what Kelly's going to help us walking through today. So Kelly, when somebody identifies that there is a need, where is usually the best place for them to start?
I think the best place to start um, is honestly, like, before any research or anything, just internal reflection on like readiness for seeking help, because a lot of times before we even start to research what's available, what supports and resources are out there, there might be our own stigma that we have to overcome about receiving support and care for mental health struggles. Um, a lot of the times I have clients come into my office who have internally recognized like some sort of problem for many, many years. Um, Likewise, clients who might not even realize there's a problem, but family members might express concern, but because of a lot of the stigma in our society, that can function as a huge barrier to actually making that call to seek out professional help. So reflecting on that, I think, is a great first step. Just being aware that our mental health is just like our physical health. Just like if we would break our arm, we'd say, yeah, of course I need to go to a doctor and have someone help me and look at this. If we're struggling with depression or anxiety or an eating disorder, whatever it might be, or even just unhappiness that we can't even put a name to what it is, knowing that that's just as valid and deserving of getting professional help if it's something that is causing pain and suffering in our lives. Like, we are all worthy of getting that help.
So then how can somebody distinguish between the feeling of like this is just life
Hmm.
versus I should take steps to actually do something about this?
Hmm. Um, I believe that like even if it is just life, like even if a person doesn't have a diagnosable mental disorder, like everyone deserves access to care and to support, even if we can't put that diagnosis to. So the wonderful thing is like that doesn't have to be our job as a like on the client side. That doesn't have to be the client's job to discern um, what kind of help do I need, how much support, what level of support. Ideally, when meeting with a professional for the first time, the professional is the one assessing and making that call of the severity of what someone is dealing with, using their professional knowledge and background and experience to help provide information on what would be the best course of action moving forward and all of those things. So I think if someone's experiencing struggle, um, like that is valid enough to go in um, and just have someone else there to support and help identify what's going on, because a lot of people who struggle with mental illness, like we don't really know that that's happening, um, because it's not commonly talked about. So I think just there's a lot to having someone who really specializes in it be able to provide that information.
So then what are the steps that somebody can take in order to find the right professionals who are the right fit for them?
Um, so I mean, it's not entirely a black and white process like most things in life, but I think just being curious, researching, um, asking friends. I think one of the best resources when starting to find a professional is if you have a friend or a loved one who you know is in therapy or counseling, and speaks highly of the professional who's helping them. That can often be a great place to start. If not, that professional can refer to others within the community. There are online sources such as like Psychology Today, or even just simple Google searches for finding professionals in your area. One of the things when researching that's really important to know and keep in mind is you're wanting to look for a licensed professional, whether that be a licensed clinical social worker, a licensed professional counselor, a licensed psychologist. Um, all of those professions practice therapy counseling. Um, but finding someone who has had the proper education, who has been through training, who has a license in good standing is really important. Um, so sometimes you can read about those different professions to see if there's one you would like the best. Read about what counseling is and how that's different than social workers, how that's different from a psychologist. Um, in the end, they're all going to be great therapists, um, in whichever one of those fields. Um, but making sure as you're searching around that the person has a license. On Psychology Today, for instance, you can read little bios and like therapeutic approaches of different professionals, and that can be really helpful just to get to know this person that you'll be meeting as a stranger and sharing pretty deep stuff with a little bit before that first session, to see if something about what they say about themselves or their practice really resonates with you or makes you feel comfortable. Um, Additionally, a lot of therapists, we speak like therapy jargon a lot, not realizing that like the common person doesn't know some of these terms. Like I might say like, I practice existential counseling or Gestalt therapy or sensory motor psychotherapy. So if you see those things listed and you're curious, maybe like searching what those words mean so you can get an idea of like, oh, Gestalt therapy is a more body focused therapy. Yeah, that interests me. Versus cognitive behavioral therapy, which is more focused on thoughts and actions. Um, just seeing like what piques your interest, what sounds like it might be helpful. I always tell my clients, um, yes, I'm the professional in mental health counseling, but you're the professional and the expert in yourself and knowing yourself. So um, it's really important that clients are making a lot of decisions with the input of a professional, but knowing truly what works best for them.
That's super helpful. So then if somebody was to going to go into Google and you were to recommend one search to kind of start the process, would that be something like mental health counselor, or what's the broad category that you would advise somebody use to get started the first time they go into Google?
Um, I would say, like, of course, including their location, so the town or city they're in, and then I'm not sure because I imagine you probably have some listeners in Canada, and I'm
Yes.
not sure what the terms for licensing the licensed professionals are up there. It's also confusing in the States because we, like for instance in Florida, my license is called a licensed mental health counselor. In Colorado, I'm a licensed professional counselor. So we all have different terms everywhere. Um, so it could just be like therapy or therapist and typing your location. That should, in theory, ideally bring up all the sorts of different types of professionals, whether social workers, psychologists, counselors. And every professional who has a license after their name will list their credentials. So you
Okay.
can always just Google what those credentials are, and we like to brag a bit about our credentials, or we want to make them known because we're proud of the work we did to get them. So I imagine everyone will list those for people to just be assured that they're getting someone with a license.
That's great. And so I know you mentioned Canada. For those of you listening in Canada, we have the Canadian the Mental Health Association of Canada, which is a national program which has offices in communities across Canada to help people with mental health needs. And you can just Google their website, go there, and that's a great resource. Um, so, so that's one tip. So Kelly, so we spoke about how somebody can kind of get started by understanding themselves and identifying their needs, and then how to get started finding the help. Once somebody finds a professional to go to, what's the next step?
Um, yeah, so I think that the next step once you find someone is before that first session, again, a little bit more self-reflection and internal processing on like, what do I want from this? I love it when a client comes into my office and tells me like directly what they want. Um, Otherwise, I ask my clients personally, like, what do you want to see happen in your life to know that we're done with therapy? So I think that is something that folks can reflect on. Like, what do I want like to see happen to know that I will be done with this process, or what am I hoping to get out of it? What am I hoping to feel? What do I want to just connect with more? So coming in with like some, and it doesn't have to be super specific at all. That's also our job as therapists to help like navigate, but having some sense of direction is helpful. And then once coming into that first session, being aware the first session can feel a little bit invasive, because for the most part, we're doing our intake assessment and just asking tons and tons of questions, in usually a pretty short time period, and that can get a little intense. I usually warn my clients. I'm like, hey, I recognize this is not normal for a stranger to be drilling you with personal questions. um, and I give them like a little warning, like, just so you know, this is not what the other sessions are going to feel like. um, so knowing that first session can feel a little bit intense and invasive, just because you're talking about pretty deep and personal matters of self with someone you've just met. So I ask clients not to base their decision moving forward with a therapist on that first session, unless something completely awful and unethical happens. For sure, trust your instincts on that. But otherwise, I think it's helpful to kind of think of when you're starting with a professional, um, mental health provider, that you're giving this trial period of, I would say a good sweet spot is about 5 sessions, to test out how it could feel. Like, sometimes it's just pretty shaky and uncomfortable at the beginning and takes a little bit of warming up. Um, but if you're still feeling like it's not the right fit, um, or for some reason there's a level of safety or comfort that you're just not feeling, that by session 5, that like is completely enough reason and valid to try out seeing, well, what could someone else be like,
Okay.
to work with.
So then what you're saying, or what I'm hearing you say, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that it's a good process for somebody to go through to make sure they're with a professional who they feel comfortable and is a good fit for them. But at the
Mm-hmm.
same time, sometimes it can take more than one session, and as you said, up to 5 sessions to truly know if there is a fit.
Mm-hmm.
Is that accurate?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, you might know right away. Like, sometimes, like, I've had clients tell me right away, they're like, this is going to be great. I'm so excited. And um, sometimes like, I'll have clients a couple sessions in, they're like, when we first met, I wasn't sure about this, but like, I'm glad that I kept coming.
Okay.
Um, and like, I will say, as a therapist, I've also had like a couple clients come, and then for some reason or another it's not a good fit, and as professionals we understand it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with us or our
Yeah.
clients. It's just people are different, and sometimes we don't like mesh perfectly in the way that we can help and receive help.
Okay.
So that's like a completely understandable thing to express and to have happen.
So then for somebody who's never done therapy before, um, is it possible to get like one introductory session or something where you can experience it without having to commit to a bigger process?
um, so some professionals offer like free consultation sessions at the beginning. I know the clinic I work at, we offer a consultation, but mostly we're assessing for a level of care, since I work and specialize in eating disorders, and there are various levels of treatment that someone might go in. I believe for folks, a lot of treatment centers will do something like that, but you're not necessarily meeting the therapist you'll be working with, possibly. But it is supposed to be just like this very non-committal. We don't even have charge for those sessions. It's just a way to get someone in the door to just like put a face to this idea of what could happen. I think there are some professionals that do like a little consultation at the beginning just to explain their practice and who they are. Um, but when starting out, like, I often tell my clients, if they're really hesitant or a little unsure about the process of therapy or treatment, like, you are never locked in. This is not an involuntary thing. You can commit to coming to the one intake session, and if you absolutely hate it and it feels awful for you, never come back. Um, but I really like to empower my clients and let them know, like, from the start, you're a paying customer of mine, and you're paying for a service that you feel helped by. So part of it is, yes, I will give my input and reflect what I'm seeing, but I also want you to tune into what serves you best and what feels best for you. And if something feels like it's not serving you or helping you, like, let's talk about that, and you take ownership in this experience as well. um, so I think sometimes if there is hesitancy at the beginning, it's really helpful to remember, like, I'm not tied into this. I can, like, I'm the paying customer. I can decide if it's not right for me. Just coming in knowing that, like, you hold power there, because I never like the experience when my clients view me as some authority figure in their lives. So I'm always about, like, empowering my clients, letting them know you're the expert in you. I'm the expert in therapy.
That's really helpful, helpful for me as well. So thank you. And so then now we've got somebody in the door, and they're starting to experience some success. What are the different stages of success that people can expect when starting this process or going through the process?
Hmm. um, That is a big question. I think because there's not, like, a clear-cut answer for it, because everyone individually gets to determine what success means to them. For someone, it might be very specific to some behavioral change that they're wanting. For instance, a lot of the time, like in my work with eating disorders, we're wanting to see a reduction or elimination of, like, eating disorder behaviors. Um, but beyond that, like, a lot of what, even if someone is working on behavior change, what's really kind of what we'll say is, like, under the tip of the iceberg of that behavior problem is um, so much work and healing to be done with our relationship with ourself. And for some people, that might mean that success is being able to have more self compassion and be gentler, kind of quiet their inner critic. For some people, it might be to be more assertive and communicative in relationships and stand up for themselves and express themselves openly when that's really scary. For some people, it could be, I just need to learn, like, I want to better prioritize my self-care and my well-being because I'm a very type A busy person. So it's so different for people, and sometimes those successes can't be measured as much with these like, clear-cut, like, action changes, but are sometimes like little intricacies, as little as I'm in my head talking in a kinder way to myself. Um, so I often in therapy, like, check in at, like, intervals, I would say at least every, like, few months with clients of, like, what do you see is going well? What are the things that you still are wanting, like, more attention to? Has anything been like, extremely helpful that we've done? Is there anything that we've talked about that, hasn't really clicked that much? So checking in often is really important. And again, I always go back to that question of with my clients of, how will we know when we're done? Like, what will be different for you?
That's some really good advice. So thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to talk about this process and help people understand what this looks like for those of us who haven't been through this before. Um, in these uncertain times, I know a lot of us are dealing with a little added stress, and if you do need help, or you're feeling like things aren't where you want them to be, uh, just listen to this and take the advice of Kelly and do the work to find the help that you need. So with that, Kelly, thank you again for joining us. This has been super helpful for me.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's always my passion to talk about this stuff.
It is. Kelly's been amazing with contributing to the work that we put out through KindHuman. So again, thank you for being such an amazing ambassador, supporter, everything that you do to help our little company. We really, really appreciate that.
No, you're completely welcome.
Okay, everybody, stay safe and stay kind.